Hey there, welcome to episode 44 of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo, recording this late on the evening of Thursday, December 28th, 2023, our last episode of this calendar year. Interesting times, the best time to look back so that we might move forward. Looking back to move forward. See what I did there? We will talk about not only some of the projects that are still ongoing and what we learned from them over the last year, but some of the things we have planned for 2024. And when I say we, I largely mean me, myself, and I, but occasionally there are cool people to be found in the greater Vegas area who actually participate in things. That was true of our initial Genius Roundtable and some of our pitch practice events. So we'll see. Let's get started. As usual, there are show notes. Hopefully you will find them wherever you found this podcast in the episode description. If not, one of the things that we will be doing this year, for 2024, I should say, is self-publishing and ideally self-hosting eventually the actual audio files for the podcast as a primary authoritative source so we can format our show notes the way we want. I'll let myself do that. And because I have found that some services, Spotify, almost the worst among them, make a kind of a mess of an otherwise reasonable amount of bullet items in an unordered list. Should be easy, but they insert too many spaces, etc., etc. Too many lines, I should say. So if you are listening to this episode, thank you. And I will run down the links real quick. Again, they are in your description, hopefully, where you found this episode. I will, in the future, update all of our show notes to make sure that it points to the Cafe Genius homepage so that you might follow that, a link to the audio programs or media page so that you might more easily find the authoritative source. So yeah, check those show notes. So first of all, as usual, I will mention my very mild monetization scheme, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, DANHUGO. It is a token. We live in a tipping economy here in Vegas. Think of it that way. If you would like, if not, I will continue to offer you free refills on audio programs. Any funds raised do go for coffee unless you get out of hand. And then I'll buy a Flair Pro 58 Plus manual press espresso machine. But in the meantime, coffee beans are the primary thing that powers these audio programs. And so you can contribute to that. As well, I have my coffee profile, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. Similar deal. While I will be working on actual websites for all of the audio programs I produce. And by the way, those are linked from the buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo profile. So at the very least, that's one of the reasons I do that. The presence of an authoritative website for audio production and other such things, blogs, calendars, etc., is ultimately the goal. Sites like Buy Me a Coffee and coffee.com, buymeacoffee.com, coffee.com, and similar sites like that are nice ways to engage people out of band. So if you have your own brand website, I know it is very common in the developer world to add a Buy Me a Coffee link to a project page, to a about page, to enable people to support open source software projects and so on. There are a variety of ways that allow people to show their support and appreciation for things. Buy Me a Coffee is one of the more popular ones, coffee somewhat. So that's why they're there. There will still be actual native websites for each of the projects, or at least parts of websites. So there you go. On with the links. George Santayana has a fairly well-known and often paraphrased quote about the value of the past that will come into play soon. I make reference to this quote frequently. It's a good one. The Introduction to Community of Practice is a link I have shared previously. I've discussed what a community of practice is. This is a link to the source, the wengertrainer.com website, Etienne Wenger came up with this notion of community of practice. I think it's worth a glance. You will probably find some similarities between what is described there and some activities and groups that you participate in, but the intent with which you participate is one of the important parts, and it's something that we learned this year that I will get into shortly. Entrepreneur in residence, defined on a Wikipedia page, or at least described. Entrepreneur in residence is sort of a soft title. It is often temporary. It is essentially someone who has been there and done that and who has time to help others between entrepreneurial endeavors. So they take some time to work at a law firm or an investment entity like a venture capital company or some other, like an accelerator perhaps, maybe at a school, a university, and so on. So you could also have entrepreneurs in residence in community scale endeavors, for example, an entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. And we'll talk more about that later. I'd like to touch on the value of retrospectives. I think learning from history is a known good thing. It's not known by everyone. There is someone under 30 here in the Greater Vegas area who advised me one time that a retrospective is a waste of time. Only look forward, do not look back. I found that somewhat reassuring that we are doomed. If we do so conscientiously, if we actually construct a strategy for conducting a retrospective so that we look for, not that we're going to limit ourselves, but we have a strategy for what we want to look for and how we can evaluate that so we can apply things we learn moving forward. So we can apply real elements to future plans so that we don't repeat the same mistakes, errors, miscalculations, or maybe we don't ignore things that were ignored previously, etc., etc. So it is not a panacea, a retrospective, but it is, I believe, better done than not. And if you are curious what the actual George Santayana quote is, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. You will often hear this paraphrased as those who do not remember history, those who do not study history are doomed to repeat it, etc. There are variations on a theme, but it's basically don't keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, which is often misattributed as an Einstein quote. It is not. I'll leave that to you to track down. So let's start with a project that we kicked off in January of 2023. It was right at the end of January. The Genius Roundtable, which was quite literally at a round table. The value of a round table cannot be overstated. By the way, if you have a meeting of more than about 6 people at a table that is long and rectangular, you will have multiple conversations. If you have more than 6 people at a round table, everyone can see each other. You're not sitting across from one person so much as sitting almost across from all people at the meeting. Obviously, this breaks down if you get into really large groups and the table size becomes radically inefficient. But in our case, we had, I believe it was 7, 8 people. So a round table meeting at a dim sum restaurant worked out pretty well. Our other meetings were held at the International Innovation Center downtown. We constructed the equivalent of a round table using some rolling tables. So we were able to all sit in a similar organized fashion. So the first 3 meetings of the Genius Roundtable were actually rather effective. That was the first cohort. The second cohort kicked off with a handoff meeting that didn't really go well. And unfortunately, the second cohort was essentially a waste of time. It was unfortunate. We didn't continue that momentum. The reason to have cohorts was to not ask so much of entrepreneurs because, as you probably know, if you're listening to this, entrepreneurs are busy. You don't have time to give willy-nilly, as they say. So the ask was very small, 1 meeting per month, compulsory. Sign up and make it. The timing was adjusted so that all could attend. So it was a completely adaptive schedule. And we did accomplish that for that first cohort, but it broke down after that. So this is an issue to address if and when, and I say when, really, in 2024, we restart this effort with a different approach to who participates Now, the first time we did this, I said, you really got to be an entrepreneur. And we had the group of people in the first cohort were entrepreneurial, but working in a service industry as a consultant, not a service industry like the service industry, but consulting services, is a different kind of entrepreneurialism. I don't think you face the same sorts of things as you do as a budding restaurateur, someone opening a retail establishment, someone creating a company and needing to hire employees, someone dealing with venture funding, someone dealing with local regulation, remote work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it would make more sense to have a broader and more explicitly entrepreneurial population in our next roundtable cohort when we start this. As well, I mentioned the community of practice, very explicitly approaching this effort using those sort of guidelines. Rule is a strong word, but the intent part of the community of practice is critical. The reason to make the meetups compulsory, there is a huge problem in the greater Vegas area. I mean, detrimental in that people will commit to things and then not show up. The RSVP is there for a reason, and people will often treat it as a reminder to not go, not attend, not to participate. So this can be a problem. Making the meetings compulsory introduced a level of responsibility. A community of practice has a similar but a little bit more specific approach to intent. So the intent to participate is critical, and obviously doing it. So the next cohort ideally will be more diverse with actual experience on the ground. Ultimately, the entrepreneur in residence, which each person participating would ideally be a possible entrepreneur in residence. So you can check out what that really means. The goal there is to have a population of people, the entrepreneurs in residence, who are actually on the ground, as I like to say. They are actually entrepreneurial here in the greater Vegas area, and who have actually addressed some of the hurdles, the gaps, the concerns, the challenges that go along with entrepreneurialism here in greater Vegas. Having and I'm guilty of this as well, having a one-person consultancy, you're still an entrepreneur, not taking anything away from that, but you are not truly aware of the challenges of, opening a storefront, hiring employees, getting funding, etc. So it's a different kettle of fish, so to speak, and I think a mixture would be good. Having compulsory in-person meetings doesn't work in Vegas, so that can go out the window. But what we find is that people will, as is so often the case, visit Las Vegas and then believe that their time in Silicon Valley or in Utah or Colorado or anywhere in California really, or in Texas, especially Austin, or in Miami or Tampa or wherever, pick a place, that they will come here and they will tell people how it's done. And I used to think that when I moved here 10 years ago from Silicon Valley, and I was wrong just like they are. So luckily, I was not in a position to actually tell people how to do it. I was more often asked, hey, you're from Silicon Valley. What do you think of this? How can we be the next Silicon Valley? How do you, et cetera, et cetera. So I was asked many questions, and I often said, well, you can't really just make a place into Silicon Valley. There's a whole lot of infrastructure there. And I've continued that message all along. So I don't think you can come here and make change. You can certainly come here and describe how Silicon Valley functioned. It is best to do so in the context of its founding in 1947-ish and how it evolved over time. And so the roundtable should similarly become expert in how the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem evolves over time here in the greater Vegas area. And certainly looking back through history of other places rather than looking at the modernity of other places would bring value to that discussion. All of that is, pardon the pun, on the table. One of the things that was probably the highest profile activity that Cafe Genius was participating in from January of 2022 was the pitch workout room. We started them at 9 a.m. at Tech Alley throughout the year of 2022 and into 2023. Although I think 2023 we actually kind of trailed off. I don't even know if we had it in January, to be honest. I can't remember. It was basically, the question was, are we getting real value from the people showing up? There were spurts of greatness. There was the presence of pitch workout room participants at other pitching events. For example, I can't remember what Startup.Vegas calls their event. Link up, level up, screw up. I don't know. One of those. So usually when they'd have their bi-monthly pitch evenings, there was one of the participants will have been at the pitch workout room, which was nice, despite the fact that one of the co-founders of Startup.Vegas would ask me more than once how my little thing was going at Tech Alley. She did not appreciate the value, unfortunately. But luckily, she's in charge of our entrepreneurial ecosystem now, so what could go wrong? Many things. The ultimate problem, though, is getting the word out. The presence at Tech Alley at 9 a.m. was interesting because people just would show up. They're going to go to Tech Alley anyway. I don't know how many people would actually attend specifically for the pitch workout room, other than the fact that they would come an hour before the event started. So some people did see enough value to get up out of bed a little bit early. There was always complaining and whining about it being so early, but that's how entrepreneurialism works. As far as I know, the pitch workout room has been restarted by someone at Tech Alley in the afternoons. I have not spent my time to keep track of that because we're going to restart pitch workout room at the International Innovation Center once again, taking place in evenings more frequently to align with more schedules. Having it once a month on a Saturday is interesting because of the nature of Tech Alley. You're competing against other events. If you have a standalone setting with participation and no time limit, we found by doing this through some months of 2023, without a time limit, you can actually have open-ended pitch sessions. The format initially was based on a 60-minute limit, so up to 6 people would get 5 minutes of pitch time, 5 minutes of feedback time, 60 minutes. If you have no limit, you can suddenly do 99-second pitches to practice for Founders Live. You can do 5-minute pitches. You can do 10-minute pitches. You can do an open-ended pitch and have a stopwatch running to report the time. That's always important to begin a journey if you don't really know what you should leave in and what you should take out, and you can get that feedback. So the value proposition for the pitch workout room becomes very clear to people who participate. And ultimately, there have been some success stories that came out of it, which is good. It is probably easiest to compare to an open mic night if you've ever performed music or read a poem or some other performance, if you've ever done stand-up comedy at a open mic night. The pitch workout room is just like a comedy workout room. You get up and you try your idea. It may be awful, but it is the start. To be honest, I've had actual conversations with comedians at comedy clubs describing the pitch workout room, and they have agreed wholeheartedly. You do not become a stand-up comedian or become good at pitching your startup idea by sitting on a couch having all kinds of great ideas, but never shining a light on them, so to speak. So the value proposition for pitch workout room is easy. There has already been demonstrated return on investment from the people who have started their pitch journey or have worked on a pitch to make it better, to receive feedback, and so on. So this is a no-brainer. The cost is zero. The city of Las Vegas has the Innovation Center for such things. Don Jacobson is always a supportive individual. He has been nothing but in this case. So we'll look forward to revisiting this. But we do have to work on the 2 major hurdles that we have to face here in our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, which are discovery. We are very weak in the area of community calendars, the use of meetup.com, Eventbrite, LinkedIn events, Slack, Discord, the list goes on. Other people who try to make their own little WordPress calendar derivatives are awful. It's a mess. So figuring out what's going on in our city of entertainment, the fun economy usually reigns. So finding out things going on amidst the noise. Now, if you want to go see U2 or Britney Spears or whoever's or in residence or showing. If you want to go see a great New Year's Eve performance somewhere, those are a little bit easier. But if you're trying to figure out how to learn, how to collaborate, who to collaborate with, who to learn from, the meetup.com infrastructure is awful. It is unfortunately the bare minimum, and people still use it. But we need to have better tools for discovery, and then we need to address the solipsism issue, which is, I'll RSVP, but I probably won't show up. And I encounter this time and time again. So a successful pitch workout room is not only people pitching, but people listening and giving feedback and learning from the process. So we'll take a concerted effort towards improving discovery and participation, and we'll see what comes of it. Going on with pitch workout room, in the pitch practice envelope is the pitch mingle. This is something I came up with after attending many meetings, many meetups, many gatherings where people, as they often do, this is not new, they mingle, they have snacks, or they are generally waiting. They're sitting outside a room, or they're sitting out in a pre-event window. You've all gathered, but the event hasn't started yet, so you're chit-chatting about what's going on. Or, as we saw at the end of every pitch workout room, because there was only 5 minutes of presentation and 5 minutes of feedback, there was always, 100% of the time, a mingle session that would happen immediately following. So just as we're closing up to head out to the beginning of the official tech alley at the time, 10 a.m., people would hang back in little circles of 2, 3, 4, 5 people, continuing the discussion. So the mingle notion is not new. It is not foreign. It is not novel. What is novel is practicing, and elevator pitch practice is a thing not done nearly enough. But if you practice your elevator pitch in front of a room of people, that's not realistic. You should be practicing how to describe what you're working on, or what you're trying to accomplish, or what your goals in life are, etc., in less than 2 minutes. I call it the Merdeka 118. It's a 118-story building in Malaysia, the second tallest building, I believe, in the world, if that's still true now. The Burj Khalifa at 160 stories is the tallest. That's too long. So 118 stories, 118 seconds, that's just under 2 minutes. That is more than enough time. It's, as I like to say, I have an elevator pitch, but I need a very tall building. So there you go. Ideally, a pitch mingle takes place in a real setting. We have mostly had our pitch mingle meetings at the Desert Winds Coffee Roasters coffee shop on Sahara on the west side. They have been good enough to let us have the space after hours, so we're not interrupting their customers, but we're in a real setting with coffee and snacks, if you like. The idea being you talk, you have a coffee in your hand, you're sipping a beverage, you have a conversation, and then you interrupt each other, you move around, you talk to other people. People are coming and going. One of the rare occasions where I encourage people to arrive late and leave early if they so desire. The whole idea is to practice being succinct without being distracted by distraction, by noise, by the cacophony of background noise, but the conversations going on beside you, the interruptions that take place, etc. So these are the exact situations you find yourself in the real world, but you never really get practice, and more importantly, you never get feedback. So just like pitch workout room, the feedback is key to hone your skills, to tune your presence, to become even better at what you do and how you describe it. Discovery and participation, however, are substantial issues, more so because once you're in a setting with tables and chairs and coffee and snacks and no particular schedule, you can come and go and so on. What has happened most of the time is a devolution into a BS session. Like, I don't want to do my pitch mingle. I'm just going to talk to people about random things and who cares. And so there's really a lack of focus. And I believe in general, the problem with the participation and focused participation especially, and substantially as well, the whole notion of showing up for things. So once you've discovered an event, which is a problem itself, showing up, so participation by following through and appearing as you suggest you might, and then what you do when you are there, because not only are you using up your time, but you're using up the time of others, especially the event organizer. That's sometimes me. I think this is a reflection on the maturity and viability, maybe the vitality too, the maturity and viability of our entrepreneurial ecosystem inhabitants and the ecosystem itself. So what are people expecting by being an entrepreneur here in the greater Vegas area? I think sometimes it's, I want to do my thing and hang out unless an emergency vehicle comes and takes me away. So that's something to address for 2024, but both the Pitch Workout Room, Pitch Mingle, and some other pitch possibilities are in the mix for 2024. I think the value proposition is substantial because the investment is essentially zero. If we can continue to work with places like Desert Wind Coffee that doesn't charge us any money, so you just, support our barista. It has been Oliver. I don't know if he will have the time for 2024. We'll see. But if you can buy a $5 coffee, we don't need to rent a space. We don't need to incur substantial expenses or even trivial expenses. You just have to show up and do what you would normally do. And the benefit is real and tangible. And getting that point across to people is tricky. And what I think would work great for discovery and participation is if people would take more ownership for sharing events like these and the value proposition to share with others. In fact, the network effect is real, right? How likely are you to recommend this event to a friend or a colleague? If you say, I'm extremely likely, on a scale of 0 to 10, I'll give it a 9. That's great. But do you do it? This is another problem in the greater Vegas area, is the taking the onus to share information. Not everything is social media. You can actually tell someone, I'm going to go to Pitch Mingle this evening. Would you like to come? I really got to put up some traffic cones outside. Anyway, so Pitch Mingle, Pitch Workout, these are going to continue, and we will step up the game on publicizing and work on discovery, not using meetup.com. I found the RSVP to actual show up gap to be substantial. It's ultimately interesting for discovery amongst the noise, but meetup.com I think is a very low value and extremely buggy platform. So that's something else we'll be covering with the Innovate for Vegas Foundation. There is a project I proposed based on the on the roundtable cohort participation, but I've been talking about it for well over 2 years. I talked about it in the FFS Talk audio program that I started producing back in 2021. It just makes sense. As an engineer, we always do a postmortem or a project retrospective of some sort to figure out what worked and what didn't. These are not new ideas. So the value of a retrospective in general, we already touched on that. Downtown Project was a recent attempt, recent as in 5 to 10 years ago. It lasted for roughly, although Downtown Project still exists, but not as it did. So when I moved to Las Vegas 10 years ago, it was just sort of coming into its full bloom, getting up and running. But a good 5-year window of time, so say 5 to 10 years ago, this was taking place in the exact same place where there is the belief that there's an entrepreneurial ecosystem today in the downtown Vegas area. It is where the innovation district is. And so if we actually look in a structured way at what worked and what did not for the downtown project and participants therein, we can actually endeavor to elevate the viability of the entrepreneurial ecosystem in the very same footprint that we find ourselves. And again, Innovation District, which formed, I guess, in 2019. So a fairly recent addition to the downtown landscape, but it's a way that we can craft what actually happens in the Innovation District that we already have. Now, I find it interesting. This is a little aside. Clark County has a proposal. I'll add this to the show notes, so I didn't go over them initially. There's a proposal to create an innovation district. You're going to hear me typing to remind myself. Okay. So there was a proposal to get some funding and to create an innovation hub in Southern Nevada and to construct an innovation district, which I find comical. It essentially was a description of what we have in downtown, or the downtown Las Vegas. The exact boundaries of the innovation district, I'm sure, are written down somewhere, but they're not quite concrete, like administrative boundaries of a city, for example. But we have an innovation district. So my entire reasoning behind the downtown project retrospective is to examine what worked and what did not, so we can take advantage of things like the innovation district we have. There is very little interest in conducting a retrospective, much less surveying the current population of entrepreneurs to find out what is working and what is not. This is the goal of the roundtable and several other things that we're talking about here. The entire reason for Cafe Genius to exist is to become somewhat expert in our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem so we can understand it and know what's working and what is not, and then take action from the bottom up. I will say this many times, as I have. People who are not entrepreneurs really should not be trying to conjure the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. So if you work for the city, if you're a city staff person and you're not an entrepreneur immersed in the ecosystem itself, I don't know that it's proper that you have control over it. Similarly, if you are an executive at a public-private non-governmental agency driving an economic landscape, I guess, these take the form of EDON and LVGEA, for examples, you're still not an entrepreneur, and you can pretend to be one. But if you're if you're a politician, you're not necessarily an entrepreneur. So I think real entrepreneurs on the ground should be taking a proactive and expert role in at least measuring and evaluating, and maybe even putting effort into changing, elevating the ecosystem. And so that's what I believe is part of the value of the value proposition of a downtown project retrospective, coupled with a introspective ongoing. So my concern with the Clark County proposal, and again, I'll link to it in the show notes, it's like a 40-page presentation. And if you flip through it, you may come away, as I did, thinking, don't we already have this? Which we do. Downtown Las Vegas has an innovation district explicitly. So building another one for millions of dollars without knowing what is working and what is not, without a proactive effort to determine those things, seems to me to be typical. So let's be better at this. We are not going to be the next Silicon Valley. We can be a better Las Vegas. I've said that many times. So the Downtown Project Retrospective is a component of that effort. Introspection on an ongoing basis to more closely examine, especially if new entrepreneurs and new innovative ventures are cropping up, visiting, moving, relocating. Merely asking a question once every few months or years, posting an idiotic spreadsheet that no one makes use of on a Google Drive. These are not good efforts. They are not sufficient. They are not going to work. So actual concerted effort done in the open, maximal participation, and sharing the results so that we can make use of them are key. So making this happen is an actual entrepreneurial effort, as you may be surmising, because governments and non-governmental agencies and others who you would think would take an interest in this, especially economic development, are not interested in the data, especially from the past. I don't know that they either don't understand or don't want to put in the effort. Not sure. But entrepreneurs cannot wait for others to solve issues. It is the nature of the beast. We roll up our sleeves and do it, or we enable those who have the time and inclination. If we are merely posting on social media asking for likes, like this post if you think we should, that's not entrepreneurialism, that's lazy. So the Downtown Project Retrospective will continue to be an attempt, and I've mentioned this in a previous episode. I think I didn't count explicitly, but I have at least 50 questions spread across 11 sections on different verticals. The idea is to make a modular survey. You know, parts of it are optional, right? You don't want to talk about this, that's fine. If you don't want to answer some questions, the questions are things like, was this effective? Did I make use of this? Were those valuable? Etc. So they're close-ended questions for the most part, with an open-ended expository writing component to each section, so you can free-form some opinions. But the idea is to come up with a structured collection of responses that we can make judgments concerning what worked and what did not, and then apply those on an ongoing basis moving forward based on coupling the retrospective feedback, the phase one components anyway, which are these surveys. Phase two might involve more of an interactive discussion, maybe particular audio programs or forums to bring out more of the details, to discuss some of the findings and so on. But the value of the introspection process in the present day and into the future shouldn't be questioned, could not possibly be doubted. So my concern here is that there is a rush to construct buildings, which is what Vegas likes to do. If it's not a casino resort, the impact may not have been thought out, considered. Not everything is as easy as a racetrack and its impact on businesses near and far from it. So that's a topic for another episode. By the way, if you are listening to this and you have listened to the Fun Economy F1 UN Fun Economy episodes, pre-mid, previously, the post episode is coming. I checked today, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority research part of their website does have some data for November 2023. That was the month where the F1 race took place, Formula One. It looks like from some reporting elsewhere and then those numbers that November from previous months had slightly higher tourism rates on the order of about 200,000 to 300,000. So lower than previous years, factoring out the pandemic window, lower than previous years by about 200,000 or 300,000, but increases in gaming revenue for November. So there was some negative impact on local business. There was some positive impact on big business. There was a possibly slightly reduced visitation rate. That's at the month level. We'll have to see how it did with the week level, week by week. But as well, the impact on tourism in general from a perception point of view, the trees at the Bellagio being gone, construction traffic, congestion. Do I want to visit Vegas during this time? So tourism in general looks like it was kind of on par, give or take a couple 100,000 on a month-by-month basis. The exact reasoning behind those, we may never know. But it's this retrospective and introspective examination, which ultimately affects all participants in an economy, even the people visiting. The value proposition should be clear, especially if you're in economic development. Why there's not more of an effort in this area escapes me. Don't know. This audio program, we started with some guests early on. This is, again, episode 44. So early in the first dozen episodes, we had some guests, and I think those were interesting discussions. Turns out people are either microphone shy or could not be bothered, or maybe have realized that I'm actually interested in real questions and real answers, and perhaps this is troubling, not sure. But getting people to participate is a challenge. Now, one of the things that I have done incorrectly, if I may say, is I was seeking guests from the very, very, very small pool of people that I came into contact with in the so-called startup scene or tech scene. I think that's a bad use of, or a bad focus to make it a tech scene. I think we should focus on entrepreneurialism and innovation, which don't necessarily have to be tech. But I was focusing my invitations on people in the tech scene here, the startup scene, people that were at Tech Alley, people that I would encounter in my travels. This is the exact same problem that I believe can be found in the Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Report that was published back in April, written and submitted by Mo Collins, who was one of our guests. She assembled her survey population by pursuing warm introduction. So I believe she had 246 people in the Southern Nevada cohort of interaction. So people she actually talked to, interviewed, posed questions to, etc. So these are people who all knew each other, either 1 or 2 degree separation or maybe more. But if you're getting warm introductions, there's a certain fraction of people who know each other directly or slightly indirectly, and then other people who may not have met each other, but they certainly have friends of friends and so on. So you're getting a very limited, highly biased survey sample of a population. Similarly, I was not extending invitations broadly, and one of the challenges there is that more people have to understand the goals of an episode, of an audio program like this and what their episode might entail. But ultimately, that comes from knowing that this audio program exists. And so reach into the population and becoming discoverable. You've heard that word already. Discovery is always a problem in Vegas. So this is something that the Innovate for Vegas Foundation is working on with the Smart Social Project. Hey, yeah, I'm involved with that too. So if we can make it easier to find local people doing local things, which is completely lost on our local media, unless you're building a stadium or killing someone, you're not going to get a mention. So if we can make that change and enable people here in the greater Vegas area, visiting or otherwise, visiting residents, some mixture of both, if we can enable connection between those people that are in the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, those people who are but don't know it, that is, I opened a restaurant. Am I entrepreneurial? Yes. Am I invited to a tech event? Maybe I'm not. I'm not doing tech. But you're entrepreneurial and innovative, perhaps. So that's why I abhor the use of the term tech. I think the Vegas Tech Fund started that trend. The Vegas Tech hashtag, I think, is a mistake. I usually use the Innovate Vegas hashtag, which the city tried to drive with the Innovate.Vegas website and the Innovation Center in the Innovation District and so on. So Innovate for Vegas Foundation fits into that mold, except that we're trying to drive that. So discovering audio programs such as this one is a challenge. Getting the point across, the value proposition to people who want to participate in interviews and discussions. Certainly those who would like to listen and take something from them. We need to connect those. A better way to discover, not by posting on LinkedIn. That is an utter waste of time. We need something better. And something better is not the Review Journal, the Sun, definitely not our local news stations. Something better, not micro communities. Discord and Slack are great to talk to your friends. They're bad for discovering information. So this audio program is a component of discussion that is owned by real entrepreneurs on the ground. We need more of that, and we need to be able to find those, consume them, and participate in them. So that's something for 2024. We'll definitely be looking more into for all of my programs, actually. I produce 4 programs a week. So getting discovered, developing a listenership. It's nice if you're a Joe Rogan or a YouTube influencer, I guess. But casual people who have something to say or have discussions to be shared need to be discovered, or you are talking to yourself, which I probably am right now. That's fine. I do it all the time. Plans for 2024. So we've looked back and we're examining some things today into the future. The Downtown Project retrospective needs to launch. I created my various sections with various questions in a tool called, I think it's called FormFill. Not Google Forms, but what I would like to end up with is a survey engine that I can actually make use of in usable ways. The problem when you're a software developer using other people's tools is you immediately find things that you would like to do better. So I'd really like to make surveying, because I mentioned there's going to be an introspective effort ongoing. I'd like to be able to take the retrospective data and introspection data on a rolling basis, make comparisons and so on. So a real survey engine that I can actually design and implement with some of the things I've come away with, having used Google Forms, having used this other tool, having seen tools like SurveyMonkey and so on. So there are existing tools that are not quite useful considering the ongoing effort that I've described, but look for this launch to take place. And also getting the word out about the Downtown Project retrospective will be tricky. People who say they would like to share the retrospective with others, especially people that were involved contemporaneously with the Downtown Project. As I've already intimated, it's very easy to say these things. The action is the question. So we'll see how that unrolls. But making the Downtown Project retrospective a component of the ongoing introspection, putting all this together into a platform that makes it easier to discover, all part of the larger plan. And this is a component of the Innovate for Vegas Foundation efforts, open source project development, making our smart city smarter. a concerted effort to draw creative people to pitch practice events, whether they are pitching themselves or whether they would like to be part of the audience, provide feedback, maybe start working on their own pitch of some sort. Your pitch doesn't necessarily have to be a startup. It doesn't have to be a pitch for funding from a VC. It could be a proposal for an event, a concert, an art show, an art gallery, a new restaurant, a new food truck concept, a new service that you'd like to start. I did a presentation on the FACE calendars. What was it called? The FACE. I can't remember it was FACE though. Focus Attention Calendars for Everyone. So I did a whole presentation on why this would work. I got some feedback. The notion is tricky, so I wanted to see how people would take the way I described it. So there's value in getting up in front of people and describing something and getting real feedback. And so that's the entire notion of pitch practice. It doesn't have to be startup pitch practice. It's more about idea pitch practice. So we'll keep doing that. We'll come up with better ways to discover, and we'll try to make participation more important, more valuable. I mentioned the ongoing entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem evaluation and assessment tools that will go along with the retrospective. So retrospection and introspection, and how they fit together and how we can view the information. I found it interesting when I first started talking about this in 2022. I said I'd really like to take a look at what worked and what didn't. Some people who were Downtown Project zealots took this as, why do you want to say negative things about Tony, which was not the case at all. I've actually pointed out in various audio program episodes of this show and others, and in person and in various discussions, that there are some aspects of the Downtown Project which I find to be extremely valuable and which we should be learning from and making use of today, which I think we are not. So there were some aspects that worked, which we're not taking advantage of. I think there were some things that did not work, which we are, I won't say taking advantage of, but we are finding making an appearance again. I think if we make a concerted effort to look at the operational components of the Downtown Project, not the individual personalities, there will be real value extracted. And so this will be true as well of the introspections. What is working? Do we need to call out a particular person? Probably not. Do we need to call out practices, policies, regulations, legislation? That makes more sense. You can replace a person. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. Replacing policies, changing the direction of a city is like steering a battleship. You need a big giant rudder. Right now, we don't necessarily have that. Finally, everything I've talked about here will sort of take on a little bit of a reboot sort of approach. Like I said, Downtown Project Retrospective really needs to cast a wide net to be valuable. And I don't know if I said that explicitly. We need to have participation and people willing to participate over a long period of time so that they don't feel pressure to take your time, answer a few questions now and then, contribute to this picture that we'd like to draw. The Genius Roundtable, I believe the true value comes from the people who participate and their actual intent. So the mistake I made for the first one was collecting people I knew. And this is rarely a good idea. This has been shown. Warm introductions and first degree contacts introduce substantial bias into any population. The best way to construct the roundtable will be a diverse and inclusive population of real entrepreneurs on the ground in the Greater Vegas area doing a variety of things, not necessarily seeking venture capital or operating an individual solopreneurship service business, but doing real things with real people. And then, the pitch practice stuff. Something I have talked about several times, and one that I would like to introduce is what I call show and tell. Those are not new words. You've heard them before. I'm not inventing anything here. Show and tell, where you actually show what you're working on. We very rarely get any sort of exposure for people doing entrepreneurial and innovative things here. As I've mentioned many times, our local media is geared towards our fun economy, crime and politics. You will hear endlessly about catalytic converter and car thefts and other crimes. Yet another police cruiser was stolen and used in a crime or as part of a crime just yesterday, 27 December. Those things get all the coverage ongoing. If you are doing something entrepreneurial in the next Silicon Valley, don't you think that should also be getting some news coverage? But no, it does not, because we are not. So the best way to enable and encourage entrepreneurialism and innovation at greater Vegas scale is to do it. And part of that is showing people what you're working on and telling them about it. It sort of takes on another version or variation on pitch mingle, pitch workout room. Show and tell is after you've pitched a couple times, after you've got some things working, show people. There is demo time at Tech Alley, and that is interesting. You get 20 minutes, but there again, you are limited by the time schedule of the event and the people attending. If you can do a show and tell, and demo is a thing that exists in the world. There are various events at greater scale, more like conferences where you demo products. If you're a fan of Silicon Valley, you may have seen a TechCrunch event where Pied Piper was demonstrated, middle out. Events like that are real. They can take place frequently, and it's something we need to drive here. So we'll look for that in 2024 to have an actual show and tell, varied and inclusive demonstration of projects in progress, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a food truck, whether it's a storefront of any kind, retail, whether it's a hardware business, biotech, doesn't matter. It could be tech, not tech. Could just be a notion. Be entrepreneurial, be innovative. Let's elevate that and bring some exposure and discussion. And make sure you keep it positive. All of our pitch practice events are any age friendly with the rule, don't be mean, constructive feedback, or none. So there you go. That's a look back to move forward. You probably had no idea that Cafe Genius had so many things on the table, round or otherwise, and we're only just getting started. Mostly the efforts of one person, unfortunately, me, myself, and I. We working on these things. I would very much like to have more participation across the board. I'd like to have more people take a proactive interest. When you are an entrepreneur and you believe that someone else will do things for you, you should look within and see where your entrepreneurial cred is coming from. You must be willing to roll up your sleeves sometimes or provide real support for those who are willing or who have the time and inclination. You can be too busy to participate yourself, but you should never be too busy to enable people who are not too busy. Ultimately, you will benefit if you take the time or spend some of the energy that you should have left over. No startup is an island. The Greater Vegas entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem most definitely needs you. Thanks for listening. Hopefully you will have a happy new year. Hopefully 2024 will be bright, prosperous, successful, and may we live in interesting times, as the not a Chinese curse suggests. I hope you will visit buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo for no other reason than to find the other productions that I do each week. The Let's Innovate for Vegas audio program, the Cafe Genius Impresarios, which you're listening to now, Quaggling Sand, which is stories and reflections, usually with a purpose. And FFS Talk is quite literally what works, what doesn't, what can we do about it. It's sort of like a retrospective, but in audio form. Again, thanks for listening. Happy New Year. Take care.